I can't begin to tell you how excited I am for this particular episode. I actually reached out to Natalie Poli for a different series I was doing called Leadership is a Contact Sport because she is a principal at a school in Illinois. And I have followed her on social media for a while, and I really like her vibe. But I only knew her through that lens. And when we started doing this series, I knew she was on my short list to approach about the possibility of being on the show. But when I got an opportunity to visit with her and actually get on a Zoom and connect and have a conversation, I realized there was so much more to this story. There was so much more that I wanted to cover, which meant that prioritizing getting her on the Ripple Effect podcast was more of a priority. She was so gracious, so giving, and just talk about a lightning rod of awesomeness. She is incredible. Let me just give you a brief rundown of who this person is. She is not only a school principal and approaches her job with the most enthusiasm and dance and singing moves you will ever experience, but she is a former beauty contestant. She was a Chicago Bulls dancer. She is a stroke and heart procedure survivor and an advocate now for all of us to get a better handle on our health, to pay attention to the little things. She's a mother, she's a wife, she is a dynamo. Natalie she just lights up the screen, and so much so, I actually had to re-record this intro after our interview because I just didn't feel like I did it justice previously. And now having had her on the show, having spent the little bit over an hour with her, let me just tell you, you're in for a treat. She is an amazing individual. And I'm just blessed. I'm so grateful that I get an opportunity to do these shows, to meet these amazing people, and to find other people out there that want to be change agents, that actually want to make an impact in the world. And this woman is doing it in spades. So I'm super excited for you guys to meet Natalie Poli. You are going to be blown away. You're going to want to follow her. You're going to want to get engaged. Most importantly, you're going to want to pay attention to your health because as an example of what she's gone through, you can learn from it. So with no further ado, let's dive into this episode with Natalie Poli. Guys, I am very excited to have Natalie Poli join us today for the Ripple Effect podcast. As I said in her introduction, infinitely interesting. And I have been looking forward to this conversation for so long. Natalie, welcome to the Ripple Effect. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
I am so excited for this. You know, you and I connected a few months back. I was telling our listeners that I had originally approached you about a series we're doing called Leadership as a Contact Sport to highlight school leaders doing amazing work. And you clearly fit that category. But after you and I talked and we had this great interaction and just the back and forth about what we could do and sort of the approach that I wanted to take to highlight your story. I definitely want to do that series at some point, but I knew instantly we needed to get you on the Ripple Effect podcast as quick as possible. So I'm so grateful you agreed to do it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So I love my life because I get to meet such amazing people like you, but you have had some very interesting twists and turns in your life, both with your health, with your experience as a Chicago Bulls dancer, uh, um, the approach that you took to become Mrs. Midwest as a beauty queen, and you're a school leader. So there is just so many ways we could dig in. But when people meet you for the first time, how do you want them to like kind of get to know you?
I think I want people to take the time actually to get to know me. So
I love that.
often we judge people. It's kind of that saying, don't judge a book by its cover. I think that you see this in, this former beauty queen, a mom, a wife, but you don't necessarily see, right? You're looking at my outward appearance, but you're not really getting a chance to know me. And I always say this is just the way that God and the universe made me,
Yep.
right? So love me, don't love me, whatever it takes, right? But we need to do it with everyone. We need
Yeah.
to take the opportunity to actually get to know someone, know who they are, know what they stand for, know their beliefs, their values, their ethics, because ultimately you can't just understand who someone is by the first time you meet them or by what you see in front of you.
I love that. Have you always sort of had that attitude about interacting with other people, or is that something that kind of evolved over time, or how did you how did you show up and decide this is how I want, not only do I want to show up in the world, but I also want other people to show up in the world?
Sure. I think there's a balance with that. I think I always believed that we should get to know someone before we, have an opinion about them. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like me, I go into things, I'm not really developing an opinion about someone. I think we align on certain levels with people more so than others. But as I got older, as I became a mom, as I became a wife, and a leader. You see and experience different things, and it makes you kind of change the way you react or the lack of reaction when you're with people. And I really always feel like, especially when I hire someone new, even if they came from a positive or a negative situation, I always let them know this is the first time you and I are having an interaction. This is the first moment that we're building our collegial relationship with one
Yeah.
another. So, clean slate. I can't judge you for what happened in the past, positive or negative. And, same thing with me, right? We're always learning, we're always growing. So we really need to give everyone the grace that we all deserve because it's hard enough just to be a person in the world today, right?
I agree. I tell people all the time, especially when we go into a new role for our career, or,
Mhm.
we're bringing people into our own companies, we're hiring people, or like in your case, bringing, new teachers and staff into your school.
Hmm.
You don't really, nobody ever teaches us how to actually get along with the other kids in the sandbox, right? We didn't really learn it in school. We didn't really learn it, when we went to, university, and nobody certainly preps you in a job environment. So having a leader like you that steps up and says that right from the very get-go, I have to imagine that really puts people at ease and lets them know I am here now with somebody who kind of sees me and is wanting to get to know
Hmm.
me and is committed to not worrying about what's happened in the past, but focus on what we can do together in the future.
Absolutely. And I come off very confident, very strong. I'm very poised. I hold myself to a specific standard because
Yeah.
I feel as if that's my true self. And so I think, though, with women and probably men like myself who come off very confident, people don't take the time, I think, sometimes to really get to know us. They're kind of like, ooh, that person has a really strong personality. But it's like, wait, hold on a second. That strong personality is exactly why I'm an effective leader. I'm an
Yeah.
effective mom. I was probably team mom of all three of my boys' sports at one time. Actually, I know I was.
Yeah.
Why I'm earning a doctorate while I earned a master's, all while having a 9 week old, a 2.5 year old had a stroke and had a heart procedure. So until you've walked in these heels, right? So I think that's something that I know women definitely struggle with in the workplace that we are trying to get to a point in our career, right? We want to continue to do well. It's not about climbing a ladder, it's about continuing to do well in the roles we're in, but also getting that professional development and that knowledge and experience for the roles that we desire to have. And letting people know that just because we're strong, we're confident, we have that personality where, frankly, a lot of people want that personality,
Yeah.
right? But some people's
Yep.
insecurities get the best of them. Instead of walking alongside someone like myself or other women on that journey, sometimes people get a little, I guess, their insecurities get the best of them. I say, we're here to lift each other up. Women should be supporting women, right? And we want the best for one another. When you move all that cattiness aside and you step out of that high school experience, right? And I'm coming from a world of having done a few pageants, Mrs.
Yeah.
Illinois, Mrs. Midwest. I even did some when I was in high school. Those are some of my very best friends. Same
Yeah.
with the dance team, same with the Chicago Lovables, right? Again, you think it's a bunch of beautiful women in amazing shape out there. What they don't know is that in order to even be a Chicago Lovable, you have to have a full time job or be a full time student. So, I was getting up at 6 a.m., being downtown for work at 8 a.m., carrying the big bag. It was hysterical. The conductor used to say, "Who's in that bag? There's got to be a boyfriend in there,
Yeah.
right? What did he do?" And then you'd be going to the United Center. I mean, so I've
This was
always,
obviously pre-marriage.
pre-marriage, yes. But I've always had that hustler mindset.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
have that mindset, nothing is unachievable. Everything is reachable.
Something you said though, I think that I really want our audience to recognize is that when you meet someone who is confident and someone who seems like they have it figured out, and you clearly do. I've got to say, when I first met you, and I think when you say, it is people's lack of, or their own insecurity when they often get intimidated by somebody that is a strong personality or is confident walking in their own shoes. Um,
Hmm.
it can be difficult for people. And what you need to recognize is that you see something in them that you want to see in yourself, right? And the best way to figure that out is by shouldering up with that person, drinking that in, learning as much as you can. And if you really want to get over yourself and overcome that lack of confidence and how you can approach them about sort of wanting to learn from them just by being in their orbit, is to tell them how much you appreciate who they are and how they show up in the world. And when you do that, you're not only
And,
making inroads with that person, but you're opening up a whole dialogue of opportunity to say, well, this is how I do it. And, I'm willing to teach you if you're willing to learn.
and that's how we create that ripple effect, right, Steve?
Yep.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
we're talking about here. It's get together, support one another, lift one another up. I think it's women have climbed corporate ladders really quickly, but you will still hear women say, we're not quite where men are. And it's not about men versus women, but it's about support the women that want to be where you are, or support the women that are maybe a little farther than you are. There's lots of women that I look up to that are farther than where I am today, right? I spent 10
Yeah.
years at home with my three amazing boys, which that was the hardest job in the world and the best job I will ever be honored to have.
Yep.
And I jumped back into the work world 10 years ago. And in 10 years, I've gone from being what we used to call a teacher's aide, which is now a paraprofessional, to a school principal. I've earned one degree in that 10 years and working on a second, right? I got my EDS degree, specialist in education, that allowed me to obtain my administrative endorsement to be sitting in the seat that I am today, and I'm working on a doctorate. So
Yeah.
you can have whatever you want. You can't complain about what you don't have and what other people might have, because anything is attainable. It really, no
Yeah.
excuses is kind of like my 2025 motto. No
I
excuses.
love,
For
I
me
love
and
that.
my staff, no excuses.
What a great motto and what a perfect way to set up the year, right? I love
Hmm.
that. So let's go backwards a little bit though. The
Sure.
confidence that you have, was that something as you were doing, you said you started doing some pageants in high school. Did you find your confidence through that process? Was that something you walked in with? Where does that come from, do you think?
I feel like I came out of the womb like that. Going to be honest with you, Steve. I think I
Yeah.
also came out of the womb dancing. I just always have been a person that has a zest for life, but that got kicked up a whole few notches when I experienced my stroke, because I lost all the feeling in the right side of my body and I lost my ability to speak. So from that moment forward, 19 years ago, I always said I would use my voice when others can't. And so I always had this, I think, presence about me, because I started dance when I was 3. I danced for about 10 years, studio dance. Then I danced in high school. I was captain of my JV and varsity dance team. So I was that
Nice.
person that always wanted to obtain the highest possible level that they could. So it's no surprise that now I'm trying, obtaining a doctorate of education. So I always
Yeah.
kind of had that mindset, go get them, wanted to be the best that I could be. And that kind of carried me through even when I was at the University of Iowa. I was a Kappa Alpha Theta there. I was on the dance team there. I would run home with my Iowa dance team uniform on to go into the cabinet, because had to be vice president, right? Go into that meeting, and I'd be taking off layers of clothing, and a student, and I was a waitress. So I just always had that just keep going, keep going attitude. And same thing with the Lovables. There was about 1,000 women that applied. That was back in the day. We had to hand write out the application in 1998. And there's 1,000 women that applied. They called 500 to the actual audition. You had to have your headshot attached to your application back in those days. And that day they took you from 500 down to 100. Then you went for another 3 days to dance and do more combinations. You were learning things 1 minute, performing them the next, and then from 100 they brought it down to 25. So I feel like I've always had myself in that arena of performing, of holding your head up high, of smiling, having that poise and demeanor
Yeah.
that I always say, like, I probably would be a really great press secretary.
I can see that for sure. Well,
Right?
so when you went to the Lovables and you made the
Mhm.
squad, tell us about that experience. What did you learn
Mm.
from that maybe a lesson or two that you still apply to how you go about your work today?
That experience truly made me the woman that I am today. I will always really feel like I owe Kathy Core, our lovable director, so much for choosing me, because it's not all glitz and glam. We had to have our hair and makeup done just for practice because we never knew who would come in. It wasn't because we wanted to always have our nails painted red, which ironically I do now that I just think about that. Can't take the lovable out of the United Center, and so she always had this firm but fair attitude with us, because we had to do, outside of just games, we had to do like appearances. We would do
Sure.
public relation appearances. We were sponsored by Miller Lite at the time. We would go into bars, but we also would go into businesses. We would do corporate events at hotels where they would have like their mass kind of opening, and the Lovables would show up. We worked the auto show in Chicago. Most of
That's
us
awesome.
took our vacation from work, and then we got paid $90 an hour, which was a lot back then, to do the auto show. So that's really, I
Sure.
think, where a lot of
Yep.
my physical kind of probably appearance of being put together came from, because I always had to be put together. Your hair, your makeup, you had to be dressed appropriately. And so she always said, I'll be firm with you ladies, but I will be fair. And I feel like I was that way and still am as a mother, but also as a school leader. You have to have a balance, right? You have to have a balance. You want to be everybody's friend, but you also have to be the leader. You have to lead them sometimes to places where they may not want to go. And same thing with being a parent. Sometimes you're going to have to lead your children to answers and experiences that they weren't really thinking was going to be the outcome. So I think that was just always kind of something I learned from the Lovables, and really how to be within an organization that had such history behind it. I mean, we danced overseas in London and Holland. So I had a lot of great experiences, but I really learned how to be a classy, professional woman with grace.
I love that.
Mhm.
How long were you with the squad?
I was with the team for 2 years. I was
Okay.
captain my second year, and then was getting
Shocker,
married.
right?
Right, shocker, newsflash.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience. But I was 23 when I kind of hung up the dancing shoes,
Yeah.
and that's a long time, from 3 to 23. I coached for a while after that, but I said every high kick and jump split that made the crowd go wow, was worth every moment of my detached labrum surgery that I had a summer or two ago. So I told the surgeon that every single high kick and jump split was worth this moment. Truly was. May have
I
been a
mean,
crusher than a brace for 6 weeks, but it was.
wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but you're still paying the price physically for it.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously.
exactly. Exactly.
Jeez. Well, speaking of health, let's talk about your very inspiration. I mean, this was actually it was part of why I was really inspired to get you on this show, was to
Hmm.
talk about your journey that you experienced having a heart procedure and recovering from a stroke at a point in your life where most people are in their prime health. Obviously, you're committed to your health. You were focused on, staying, even, when you had left the squad, to stay in shape. But you had
Mhm.
just, was this after your third
This
child,
was
your
after
third
my
son?
second son, Dylan.
Okay,
He was
second. Okay.
9 weeks old.
Well, tell us about that experience. What actually happened, and then what have you learned from it?
Absolutely. So I was 29, new mom. I had a 2.5-year-old and a 9 week old. And I remember that day just feeling a little off. And I am now remarried to a wonderful man, police officer here in Illinois. But my ex husband and I at the time were home both together. I had just driven my two sons, my little guy, right at the time, my middle one, and Cole was 2.5, back from the vet with our dog. So in my mind, right, I would have been
Just a regular
driving,
routine day, right? Yeah.
regular day. I think the dog may have been sick. And so you're driving, right? And of course, I'm
Yep.
driving with the right side of my body. And so I think about that as I look back. And I got home. Dylan, my 9 week old, was still sleeping. My mother in law at the time said, "You never wake a sleeping baby, Natalie." I'm like, "Okay, I got you." So I brought him in the carrier, left him in there, put him in the dining room. It was quiet in there. Went upstairs, started to give Cole a bath. So I drained out all the water after his bath, and he always liked to kind of slide from the back of the tub, like with that little bit of like just water that was still in the bathtub. So I'm like, "All right, Cole, be careful, don't get hurt." I walked to his room. I looked for, he was in pull-ups at the time, and I remember reaching on his bookcase for the pull-ups, and all of a sudden the whole stack just fell to the side.
Oh,
And something just came over me. I knew something wasn't right, and I fell to the floor. And I crawled into the hallway, and I yelled for my ex-husband, and I said, "Ryan, Ryan." And he came running up the stairs, and I looked right at him, and I said, "I think I'm having a stroke." I have no idea how I knew that. I knew I
did you?
felt
I mean, you
awful.
identified that it was a stroke happening at that point. Like,
Yeah,
it's the only
which
thing
was
you could come
so
up with.
odd.
Oh, wow.
So I was still able to talk at that moment. I said, "Take care of Cole. I don't want him to see me this way. Something's going on." We're young. We're 29. He listened to
Sure.
everything I said, right? He did exactly what I asked him to do. And from this day, even when I look back, that I couldn't have asked for it to go any different. I didn't want Cole to see me in that state. So I went to go lay down, still wasn't feeling well. I tried to call my in laws at the time, and they actually told me the following day that they thought it was Cole, my 2.5-year old. At the day you could do speed dial on your phone. They thought it was him playing with the phone because they didn't hear anything on the other end. Well, I didn't know I couldn't talk. So
Oh,
I decided to go downstairs. This was before smartphones. So I went downstairs to get my doctor's card out of my wallet. And I remember tumbling down part of the stairs.
oh my gosh.
My mom to this day, "How did Brian not know you were falling?" I said, "I must have been that graceful." The dancer was that
Yeah.
graceful. So I got the card, made my way back upstairs, and I remember them saying, and I always use XYZ answering service. And in my mind, I'm saying, "Please have the doctor on call page." And in response, I hear, "Hello, hello." So
Oh,
no one can hear me. So I think I'm saying one thing, and I'm clearly not saying that.
wow.
So finally, I dial 911, and I hear them say 911 dispatch. And again, I'm saying, "Please send help." And they're saying, "Hello, hello." So clearly, nothing, it really was an out of body experience. I kind of saw my limbs, but I wasn't feeling the limbs on my, on the right side. And I truly thought this was the way you die. I remember getting up to my bed to lay down, going, "This is how you die. I'm dying." And sure enough, an officer came to the door. I got downstairs, and he said, "Natalie, I want you to write down what you're trying to tell me." And he put the pen in my right hand. He gave it to me, and it immediately dropped to the floor. And next thing I heard him say, with his radio right attached to a sleeve, and now I have a son that's a police officer and a husband, so I see them like this all the time. And he's like, "I have a 29-year-old possible stroke victim. Send the EMT immediately." And
Wow.
I actually had the opportunity to meet Sean, the officer that I say saved my life
Wow.
during my year as Mrs. Illinois, going for Mrs. Midwest. And he's now retired, but he was a rookie then. And I have some really emotional pictures of me seeing him for the first time about 3 years ago. And he goes, I was a rookie, Natalie. You were like one of my first real calls. And I said,
Wow.
had you had not been so swift to get help, this could have gone totally differently.
Yep.
So I got immediate attention. They have to
Wow.
push, specific meds within you if they know you're having a stroke to break up the clot.
Yeah.
And so I did regain all my speech. I regained all the feeling on the right side of my body, and I did not have 1 ounce of brain damage or residual damage from the stroke. I had an eye twitch for a while, and I had a little bit of hard time kind of reading again, which they said was normal because it's almost like when you tell a kid that hit his head, you have a boo-boo on the brain, right? Like you got a
Yep.
boo-boo on your head. This was like, boo-boo on your brain. And so I made a full recovery. I finished my master's on time. And that truly kind of set the tone for me in regards to kind of trying to figure out my why. Why did I survive? I have really bad
Wow.
survivor's guilt. I am one. I am 1 in 8 that have developed anxiety or PTSD from the situation. 1 in 8 CHD survivors will have stress, PTSD, anxiety, depression. That's a real thing.
Wow.
So they found out that I had a congenital heart defect that I was born with, and I had 2 holes in my heart and atrial septum aneurysm. And even though I went to the doctor when I was on the Iowa dance team because I was having a lot of chest pain running, we would run, we trained for the nationals on ESPN. They were like,
Jeez.
nope, you just, might be borderline asthmatic. Everything looks good. Well, I had the same situation happen to me when I was a lovable, and I said to my girlfriend at the time, give me your inhaler. And she goes, Natalie, you don't even have asthma. She would keep it under the hoop on the basketball, on the floor,
Wow.
on the United Center, under the hoop. And I'm like, Kim, I said, I need it. I can't breathe. And then again, went to the doctor. I said, do I have asthma? Something's wrong. I feel like there's an elephant on my chest. And they said, blow into this tube and borderline asthmatic. I lived another 8 years before I fell to the floor and had a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
So I had the clot resonate on the left side of the brain that controls your speech and language, and also the feeling on the right side of your body. And so I had about 3 months later in March 21st of 2006, actually, I had 2 atrial septum defect devices placed in my heart by Dr. Hijazi and his amazing team at the University of Illinois Chicago Hospitals. And he is the individual that runs the PIC Society, and I am the founding senior patient advocate for the PIC Society and get to do this advocacy worldwide. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I wrote my children's book. It's just we can't get this out enough, which is why we now have CERT plans in all of our schools here. We have them in Illinois. The bill passed. Other states are going to be following if they haven't already. And we have got to have a cardiac emergency response plan. And so I live that plan pretty much every day because I know what it's like to be fine one
Yep.
minute and hit the floor the next. And I'm just lucky enough that I was saved to share my voice when others can't.
Wow. I mean, that's just incredible. Was the congenital heart defect a defining reason why the stroke occurred, or were they unrelated but they discovered it?
No, it was the reason. So
Okay.
being postpartum at the time, 9 weeks, a woman already has a larger volume of blood that she's pumping through her system. And
Yep.
so because I had 2 holes in an atrial septum aneurysm, my heart was a perfect environment for a clot to form. And it went from my heart to the left side of my brain. And one of the interesting things about a congenital heart defect is that heart defect is already formed in an embryo before a woman even knows she's pregnant. So people will say, is this hereditary? No, it's genetic. Well, isn't genetic hereditary? Well, no, it's within your own genetic makeup. This is the way that my heart formed when I was in the womb. It just happens to be that it's the way that it forms. So that's why you hear them doing procedures like this on little babies when they're born. And they're hearing those irregularities right after they're born. With me, nobody ever heard a heart murmur. Had they had heard that murmur, well, they heard it when I was in the hospital after the stroke, but that was too late. Had they had heard that murmur, then maybe further testing would have been done, like an EKG to check for the rhythm, which mine was fine. So they would have had to have gone a step further and do an echocardiogram with the bubble study.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so not only have you gotten an opportunity to to be an advocate for this, but you've
Mhm.
also created your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about that, because I've listened to your episodes and they are, everybody should listen to it. So we're definitely going to provide some links to your Spotify channel. But tell us what inspired that. Was it the desire to spread the message as wide as possible, or what are you hoping to accomplish with your podcast?
So my former lovable choreographer called me one day and she said, Natalie, you need to put your hat in your, your name in the hat for Mrs. Illinois. And I'm like, I think I was 43 at the time. I said, are you kidding me? I have 3 sons. And she goes, it doesn't matter your age. You need to do this. This is all about branding, and you already have a brand. You already have a platform. I'm like, what would that be? She goes, you are constantly sharing on social media, Heart Health Month, doing things with the American Heart Association, doing things with the PIC Society. She's like, just sharing pictures, doing things during, in May for stroke awareness. She's like, you're already doing all these things. And so what I wound up developing was my brand called Stroke of Insight. And that became, at the time I had a website. I don't have the website anymore due to my new job the past 3 years. It's been a little bit more, to handle. So the website I put aside, but kept the podcast. It's called Stroke of Insight. And my goal with that is to interview individuals that either survivors or parents of survivors of congenital heart disease, or physicians, or even I had the former Mended Hearts International executive director. So try to just have individuals on this podcast that can share a little bit about their own experiences. And it also became a branding piece for when I was competing for Mrs. Illinois, and then Mrs. Midwest International, and then taking the national stage for Mrs. International. And it was really just about that pageantry. That stint in pageantry again was about, how can I get on the largest stage possible within my reach to share about Stroke of Insight, which is ultimately to educate, advocate, and inspire others about congenital heart disease. And so I did some Capitol Hill work. At that time, it was it was in COVID, so I had to do it all. I didn't actually get to go to Washington, but I did it online through Mended Hearts. We had a huge, huge showing with senators and other Congress individuals that were able to hear not only our stories, but why passing some of these bills that you see passed today are so important for people like me and young children.
What so based on what you're doing with the podcast and the advocacy work, what's the core message that you want to put out to the audience? That, and I apologize, I don't know if you can hear this. The day that we decide to record, they decide to trim the trees outside my building.
That's okay. That's okay. This is what we call life. And I
This
love
is
that
like,
this happened because this just shows everybody that life isn't perfect, right?
that's right.
You might
We're
see
rolling
it,
with it, right?
we're rolling with it. No life is perfect. And if anybody says it is, they need to check themselves because
But
it's not.
you're the star, so I'm going to go on mute, so we
Yeah,
don't hear this crunching of branches out there. But I'll pipe in, but you'll probably hear this. It's not my stomach, I promise.
yeah, that's funny. So repeat your question, Steve.
Yeah, so I was asking, what's the key takeaway or the message, given what you're doing with the podcast and obviously the advocacy work that you're doing? What do you want my audience to hear and learn from you about recognizing these things that you can't continue to ignore, because we get busy and we have these challenges that present in different ways in life, and we think, I'll get to it, but someday you may be forced to deal with something like you did, right? You weren't expecting anything, and then boom, what happened.
Hmm. So I have a video with NBC5 Chicago. I could send you the link, Steve. I may have already sent it to you already, but it's the link with every interview and podcast that I've done, and I'll be adding this one to it. One of the things I said during that time with Lauren Petty here in Chicago is, if stroke is coming for you, it's coming. It doesn't matter your height, your weight, your race, your ethnicity. It does not matter. I have always considered myself to be fairly in shape, right? 48 years old. I think, as we get older women, we experience changes within our physique. But I've always considered myself, a fairly fit individual. And I was 29 at the time, in probably some of the best health physically, you can have babies and the next day you look like you did prior to even getting pregnant, right? So if stroke is coming for you, it's coming. It's not looking for someone necessarily that might be overweight or might be a certain shape. It's coming for you. And so I want people to know that the choices you make now with your health are absolutely the choices, the positive choices you need to make. But sometimes we don't know what resides inside us. I didn't know I had a congenital heart defect for 29 years. But what I want you to really understand and take away is you have to be able to silence things in your life, the noise from the outside that doesn't benefit you, to hear your true calling. And my true calling is to get up every day and to kick major butt in everything that I do. It's the highest high kick every single day that I could possibly do, because that's what needs to happen no matter what people say, because not everybody's not going to like what you do. They're not going to like the way you do this. They're not going to like the way you do that. Get in line. That's what I say. Get in line. No one's perfect. And if you could do it better, that's great. Go and do it better. I let me know how it goes, right? But every day, my job is to get up and shine as the brightest darn star I can and do the best job that I can and use my voice to inspire, advocate, and educate others, not only on congenital heart disease, on stroke, on heart health awareness, but also in my job, inspiring my staff, my teachers, my paraprofessionals, down to my custodian, my front office staff. There's a whole line of people, and no one's in a specific order. We're all a team here. And so my job is to get up every day and do the darn best job that I can with what's going to be in front of me. My dissertation is on fragmented work days of principals, because, we could have a whole day planned, but one thing and then another thing, right? I call it a fragmented workday. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to kind of continue that research, but you have to silence what's going on around you to be able to hear what your true calling is. And then your main job is to go out there and live your true calling in every single thing that you do. I'm an advocate no matter what arena I'm in. I'm an educator no matter what arena I'm in, and I inspire no matter what arena I'm in. If I'm at home with my kids, here at school, out with friends, helping someone, no matter what it is, that is always what I'm fulfilling. My motto: be bold, be brave, be you. And no excuses.
I love that. I think anybody that's going to see this video or is going to listen to this on the podcast platforms is going to be completely blown away and impressed by you. And for my audience, this is why I wanted Natalie on the show. I mean, you hear this. I mean, she is a spitfire, and she inspires and motivates, but she also walks the talk, right? And I think that's really it's really inspiring on a whole lot of levels. I think the thing that really struck me when you told me your story about the stroke and then obviously the heart procedure. um, I played soccer with a guy for my men's team for a number of years. He was our keeper. Great guy, played rugby at UT. I mean, he stayed in shape. Wouldn't look at this guy as anything other than probably capable of killing a bunch of beer at one time. He was physically fit, really really good guy, right? But literally we played a game before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving Day rolled around, and he was helping his wife prepare Thanksgiving dinner. They had family coming over, and he was talking, and then all of a sudden he just wasn't making any sense, and then boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And never saw it coming, didn't pay attention. He had
Mhm.
some health indicators previously that I didn't know about that he should have paid attention to but didn't. And he was in a high stress job, lots of lots of turmoil and
Mhm.
daily challenges. And kind of like what I think the excuse is for almost every American out there is like, well, I'm too busy today, and I'm going to get to it tomorrow. I'm going to deal with my health, or I'm going to go check out this little weird symptom that's come up. I mean, the message that I really hear from you is don't. You need to pay attention to yourself. You need to be your own advocate. You need to
Mhm.
recognize when something's not right, and you need to take it upon yourself to go investigate it, because as you found, obviously, in your early days, the some of these things that may have occurred, were just kind of getting, kind of blown off, but,
Hmm.
thinking, the natural thing is, oh, well, you have asthma. It's like, well, it's not just asthma. There's like other elements there. But, in modern medicine today, they don't dig very deep, it's treat them and street them. And so you have to be your own advocate. But you have to start by being the advocate within yourself first, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Because no one's going to do it for you. And now you see how healthcare has really changed post COVID. Like you said, it's, you're treating people, but so quickly you're gone, right? And how many times you have to advocate to say no, not feeling right. I was in the urgent care over Christmas, actually on Christmas Eve, because our schedule with two police officers and my younger son was working at the country club. The middle one was working. He works for an electrical company, and I was like, I'm here by myself right now on Christmas Eve. This is we're doing Christmas Day this year. We usually do Christmas Eve, and I just knew I was not feeling well. I walk in, they didn't give me any antibiotics, which I knew I had a sinus infection. And I looked at the physician, and before I left, I said, I just want you to know I'm 48 years old. I've survived a stroke and a heart procedure. And I tell you right now, I know when I have a sinus infection. So I understand that you don't want to treat me with any antibiotics. I'm going to go, but I'm probably going to be back after Christmas. And so Christmas Day, I started to get the chills, right? So now you got something else on top of it. And I called the doctor the day after Christmas and they got me in. And I told her, I said, they told that physician at the urgent care that I know when I'm sick. And it's just kind of like, it really shouldn't take us to talk that way.
No.
But I looked right at her. I'm like, I'm 48 and I'm a stroke survivor and I've had a heart procedure. I do know when I have a sinus infection, but you're the doctor here.
Yeah.
So, but it's just different, right? And it's not everywhere and it's not everyone, but you really have to be your own advocate because no one's going to do it for you. And that even goes towards, your work role. You have
Sure.
to advocate for yourself. And it's
Yep.
even like with sports. I always told my boys, nobody's coming to Itasca, Illinois, Roselle, Illinois, Medina, right, where our schools are. No one's coming here to look for you. They're not going, that kid? No, you have to get your name out there. You got to get on Twitter. You got to get on
Very true.
Huddle. No one's coming here looking for you. They're not sending the search party. You got to market yourself and you got to know how to market yourself and how to connect yourself with the right people, which is what I try to do. And you have to write your legacy. And that's really what it's all about. We're doing that here at my school now. Our school's closing at the end of next school year. And so it's how are we writing the Lowry legacy? We're in the second largest district in the state of Illinois and we have tons of work to do. We're looking to really heighten up our students' achievement and also build the capacity within our staff. And we're giving a lot of job embedded professional development. But I tell my staff even now, this school has been around since the 1800s. What legacy do you want to live? Because it doesn't matter who worked here in the past. It matters who's working here now and
Right now.
next
Yep.
year. Because then you're going to other schools in our district, right? Or building
Yep.
new schools in our district, a lot of excitement. But some of our older buildings, it's time for them to retire. So what's next for you if you're staying? You have to
Yep.
write your legacy and you have to write that chapter in your book that the next school leader is going to want to read. It's up to you what it says.
I love that. I love that attitude and that approach. And it's very similar to the philosophy I tell people when I'm out talking about the ripple is really no one cares about you until you give them a reason to care about you. And you'll never give them that reason if you don't step up to the plate to take
Mm-hmm.
your swing, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that it's so important and it's true, like you said, very much so with your health advocacy and being your
Mm-hmm.
own advocate and not just taking the first answer that's given. And it also is very true in your leadership style if you're fortunate enough to be a leader and in being able to step into that power and understand that. But even if you're just trying to make a name for yourself and maybe you feel a little awkward because you haven't accomplished what, maybe someone else has, or maybe you don't necessarily have, this long list of experience, but you do bring something unique that nobody else in the world can bring to that job. That's you, right? And every one of us has a gift. Many of us stop searching for what that is and understanding and appreciating it. What you've managed to do with your life and your work, right? And I use that word very loosely because you've inspired in all of these different channels that you've opened up about, getting your message out, expanding, awareness for these important topics, but then also still controlling your power and saying, look, I'm not done. I got more, I have
Hmm.
more butts to kick. I have more things to do. And I am not going to just rest on my laurels of what I've done thus far. I'm going to continue to push the needle and continue to, focus on the next set of goals and objectives.
And it's about having that perseverance and that will and determination to do it. When I was getting out of the hospital after I had my stroke, I was there for about 8 days, and I had this cute little Tinkerbell sweatshirt on that had a zipper, and I had to wear a heart monitor. So I put the heart monitor underneath it. Well, that was back in the day where you can like walk in the lobby and they had coffee and like donuts for everybody, right? All pre-COVID. And I remember the nurses saying, "Who are you here to see, hon?" And I go, "I'm the patient."
Yeah.
Because I was on the cardiac floor. They were
Yeah.
sweet as pie. Honey, who are you here to see?
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
And so, I think about them getting ready to release me, of which I just pulled out the piece of paper the other day out of my jewelry box. It was this white piece of paper. And I come into the kitchen and I have it here and I show my kids. I said, okay, you know what I have here? They're like, Mom, we don't even know. We're afraid. I said, this is the name of the nurse that discharged me. They're like, when
Oh.
you had your stroke in 2006? I said, yes. And they go, you should text her. I go, yeah, because now I could text her before I'd have to call her, right? And so it's just, I remember saying to the doctor, okay, now it's Tuesday. On Thursday, I need to go to my master's class. Can I do that? Am I going to have a heart attack? And they're like, no. I go, okay, because I'm going to class. And I brought my
2 days
husband at the
after you got
time.
out.
2 days, I had to do shots of Lovenox in my abdomen. So I was on Coumadin.
Oh.
You have to do the
Oh.
shots of Lovenox until the Coumadin takes effect. And I said, okay. I said, because I'm going to class. I went to class on Thursday. I brought my ex-husband at 6 o'clock. I came out. He gave me the shot of Lovenox in my abdomen. And I said, okay, graduated on time. So, and I was blessed to be able to go on and have a third child. And I remember everybody saying, wait, how are you doing that? I go, oh, don't worry about it. The doctor said that I was a ticking time bomb with the first two, but now my holes are closed. So it's totally safe now. But the first two, that wasn't good. But you don't know. And what came to be is we see all the time is the low pulse ox in women that give birth. So I had a nurse tell me that sent me a message a couple years ago on my website, and she said, Natalie, she goes, I heard what you said on one of the podcasts that you were on, kind of like this, Steve, that when I gave birth, I remember to my second son, they were saying her pulse ox is at 75. Why is her pulse ox that low? And they're like, oh, it must be the machine. No, it was me. My pulse ox was at 75, and you should be as close to 100 as possible. And here, something as simple as that, they could have said, shoot, get an echo machine in here. We got to do something, right? Or start looking at things. And that was another pure indicator that that low oxygen level showed that there could have been something with me cardiovascularly.
Yeah, well, going back to my buddy that's the soccer player, and sadly he has not recovered to the point where he can come back and play, but he's back working and living his best life now. But at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, I know that one of the things they said was have that thing with you at all times, right? Have the
Yes.
pulsometer where you can
Yes.
take it. And I know that recommendations have been made that every single one of us over the age of 20 should have one so that we have it nearby. We know
Mm-hmm.
what our normal rates are. Look at the data that your watches are providing and all of the devices that have been created, but really understand what's going on with your health. Know what your baselines are. Know what your how if you're not sleeping well or you're running into challenges with high stress, recognize what those markers are because those are important things to share with your physician, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just saying once a year when you go get your health, or regular checkup, right? It's something that you need to know when something is off, stop and go figure out what it is and have
Mm-hmm.
that data with you because it can be incredibly invaluable. I know he told me that he had made that recommendation to another colleague who also turned out to have some pre-stroke symptoms that they had some
Wow.
worries about him actually having blood clots in his legs. And so these are
Yes.
things that you went through the experience so that you could teach so many thousands and tens of thousands of people what to pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to, and we're blessed to have you. So I'm so grateful for
Thank you.
that. But there was a higher calling and a purpose in why Natalie's here.
Yes, I truly feel like each day I'm constantly trying to live that out. I know it's to use my voice when others can't, but I always feel like there's just so much more that I should be giving. And I think at times I get caught up in that. Like, what else could I be doing? And I think that's why I have such high expectations for myself and those around me, is because I know that we can always give a little more, right? We can always give a little more. And so I just try to keep doing what I'm doing. You try to just keep being as awesome as you can, and it's really showing up every day for yourself. And again, you can't control others' perceptions of you. And I'm not someone where people have had negative necessarily like perceptions that I know of. I mean, I'm sure you meet people and they say things to themselves, but I always live by that though, right? Like, how can I continue to be a better person? Or if someone gives you some type of response or feedback, take it in, reflect on it. It doesn't mean anything negative. It just, they're helping you grow, right? They're helping you learn. So often we say, oh, that was negative feedback. Actually, no, that feedback is exactly what you needed at exactly the right time. Now, how are you going to take that and use it as a springboard to the rest of the awesomeness that you're about to do? So I think that it's that your mindset, right?
Yeah. I love how you frame that, because at the end of the day, we are kind of cultured, right, to take any negativity and we internalize it like, oh my God, I'm so bad. Or, now this person has judgment over me and now I have this level of shame attached to it. I think that the point that you just made there is significant, right? Because at the end of the day, you can learn something from everybody, even your detractors and your haters, right? You can either agree to disagree on their point or their perspective of you, or you can utilize it to say, well, is there something there, is there something I could do or maybe adjust or adapt a little bit differently to maybe have a different result. But you get the opportunity to have that. Don't just shy
Mm-hmm.
away from it and don't go hide in the corner. Understand why it's being said. And sometimes, and I'm suspect someone like yourself that is as active and out there as you are, there probably are people that are detractors to you because you have this amazing bigger than life persona, right? You're beautiful, you've done a lot of things in your life and your career, and you're out there. You're not just talking in small circles, you're trying to make an impact to the whole damn world, which I think is fantastic. And so I can sense that there's probably been some people are like, like they always have to find an excuse to kind of, be a naysayer, right? But I love that you're like, hey, look, bring it on. I'll take it all. I'll listen to it. I'll take what makes sense and apply it, and the other stuff I'll ignore.
And what's great about that too is if, when that does go on, because it does, you're just feeding more into this great world, this universe, and you're going to get more of what I'm giving, right? So the more, you're just giving more attention to the whole platform that I'm already trying to share, right? Rather it be congenital heart disease or being a leader in education, but you're feeding into that with that person, and that's exactly what we want. And the one thing I think people also need to hear, Steve, is that who cares what people think about you, right? You want to be a good person. You want to be professional. You want to have ethics. You want to have values, morals, and beliefs. But when it's those people, that you hear chirping or their telephone game is starting, you gotta laugh. Who cares? I'm glad that I'm the topic of your conversation. Thank you for making me feel empowered, right? And you have
Yeah,
to remember,
yeah,
like, no response is a response. So many times I've caught myself too. You get so fired up and you're like, there's absolutely no way that just happened. And then it's like, I'm not responding to that. You know why? Because that's my response. No response.
yeah.
And to know that you can take that serenity back. You can take your serenity back in that peace by not even engaging with those people that want you so bad to engage, which is why they said or did the thing you weren't approving of in the first place. So it's really powerful when you don't respond, or it's the thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I'll think about that. And you walk away, because at the end of the day, no one's opinion matters. It's about what you do, how you matter, how you want to live your life, and how you are trying to help and make this world a better place by whatever it is that you feel like your calling is.
I love that. Natalie, you need that phrase right there on a t-shirt and a billboard. I mean, that was well said and great, great advice for everyone. So
Mhm.
we're gonna do this episode a little bit different. Normally I wrap up with some Ripple connection questions, but I know that we've run a little bit long and I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to have you back because I think
Sure.
we have more to share and more to talk about because you're amazing on every level. But I would like to give you the opportunity to tell everyone how they can get involved, how they can follow your work and what you're doing, and then ultimately at the end of the day, if they want to connect with you, if you're open to that, because they've had issues in their own health, or they're trying to learn a little bit more about the experience that you went through to see how it matches up either with themselves or a family member. How would you like people to best follow you or get engaged with your content?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter. I just have such a hard time calling it X, but you can find me on Twitter, Natalie Poli, just how my name is there. If you search that on Twitter and also LinkedIn, those are truly the best ways to get in touch with me. We can make our initial connection and go from there. So I'm always willing to talk to anyone, rather if you know someone that's you're a survivor, you're looking for help, you're looking for support, I can connect you with lots of great people. I do a lot of work with the American Heart Association. I've got some information on their website. They just did a story in August on my story. Mended Hearts International is another great organization. If you have an infant, there's the little hearts. So if you even look them up on Instagram, Mended Hearts International, there is a support system for every age and stage of life. So if you
Wow.
need that outreach, if you aren't sure kind of, what your next steps are, you're just trying to look for that support because you're feeling down, you've had something like this happen to you and you're just looking for care, they also have volunteers that go into hospitals all across the nation. So I would suggest you can also look at them. They're on Instagram as well. The PIC Society, the Pediatric Interventional Cardiovascular Society, is really for doctors and nurses. So if you're a cardiologist or you're a nurse practitioner in the fields of cardiology, the PIC Society, Pediatric Interventional Cardiovascular Society, you can find them on the web. And those are individual that group, that society Dr. Ajazi leads, you can actually become a member of that society. So that is something, if you're a cardiologist or a nurse, that you want to take a look at. They have membership options, and it's worldwide. I've interviewed doctors from India to Chile, all over the world, and so they have clinics that they'll do procedures just like mine. That's videotaped, so there's education that you can have. So there's lots of great resources. So don't feel like you're alone. If you're someone that's had a stroke or a heart procedure, if you know you have a congenital heart defect, there's people out there. Please, if you don't know who to send a message to, send one to me. But you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach me.
I love it. We're going to include those links in the show notes so everybody has them. They'll be on screen as well for those of you that watch the video. Before I let you go, one of the things I would like to ask you is when you hear the term the ripple effect, talk about, I mean, when I think Rippler, you are 1000% right there. I mean, you are new gold standard, just so you know, we're going to anoint you that right
Awesome.
now. But
Thank you.
what does that term, mean to you when you hear it?
It makes me think about the work I try to do in inspiring others in everything I do, right? If we're out there living our best life and being our best self, right? And for example, let's just say like when I'm leading my staff, I'm inspiring them, or when I'm talking with a group of individuals like I am here today about congenital heart disease or perseverance, dedication, it's about inspiring others not to do the same thing you're doing, but again, it's about their calling. What is your calling? And now, how can you take your calling and now inspire, advocate, and educate others? And that's how I see that ripple effect happening, Steve. It's all about what we feel we hold inside of us, what our true calling is, because everybody has one. The homeless person on the street has one. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Everybody has one. And so it's about advocating, educating, and inspiring at the level that you feel is meant for you, and being able to just touch people in this world and get them to do the same about what their calling is. And so, on a serious note, that's really what I feel like resonates with me when I think about the ripple effect. On a fun note, it is my great desire, and I tell my husband this all the time, Tony, you're going to be listening to this. Whenever I'm in a store and I hear a great song come on, all I want to do is start shouting it out and singing and getting everybody else in the room to start singing it with me. And just the other day, I forgot what song came on. I think it was Whitney Houston. I want to dance with somebody. I was just kind of like sitting there. We were checking out at Under Armour, I think, and I turned to my husband. I was like, "Oh, I want to dance with somebody," and he was like totally the Instagram, where like the one person's like the wild one, the other
Yeah.
one's talking. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you not want to dance right now to the
Yeah.
song? I'm like, my dream is to get everybody in this place going. I was in Bath and Body Works one day a long time ago, and I was starting to sing, and this other lady behind me was starting to sing, and I was like, you go, girl. I mean, it's just things like that. Like, why aren't we doing more of this in the world? I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't we doing more of this when we're out in public and just living life and having fun? But I do that with my assistant principal here. If somebody says something like, the other day someone goes, "Can you stop?" to one of the kids. And I looked at my assistant principal and I'm like, "Collaborate, listen, or hammer time?" Uh, 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 uh. I mean, like so now every time someone says something I can add a song to, that's how we're walking around this building and that's how we're enjoying our day. I'm like, why are we doing more of this?
I
Create this
love
ripple
oh,
effect.
that might be like the best answer I've ever
I
gotten
want
to
to
that
do it.
question. Like
I don't
by
understand.
far. I love it. And I can absolutely see you doing that. I can absolutely see your husband being like, what?
He's like, what? He's got like the face. He's like, what are you doing? And then he's like,
I
oh,
mean,
no.
you might have been the original inspirer of where these people did these flash, mob things, right?
It's my dream. It is truly my dream. I want someone to tell me where I need to be and what time to be there, and I want to be a part of it.
All
I
right.
just
Well, when you
agree.
set it up, let me know. I'll show up. I'll be there. I'll be there.
We'll get a big
Um,
drone.
yeah, that would be awesome. That
I
was
know.
so much fun.
Yep.
What last question for you, and
Sure.
then I'll let you go. But what ripple can I be looking to create for you?
I think just helping me share the message to be who you're truly meant to be. So many people right now are looking at Instagram, all these influencers. That actually brings you down. That
Yeah.
doesn't bring you up. And there's scientific research to prove that, right? I'm not saying stay off of social media. I'm on social media. But I am saying, how do we help one another just fulfill their calling? And when we engage with one another, really being an active listener so that if we are asked a question, just like, right, you asked me just now, Steve, how we can truly answer it and know that person's hearing us. So I think just, helping me advocate, educate, inspire in all aspects that I believe in, from congenital heart health, because February is Heart Health Month. So National Wear Red Day is Friday. So if you're like me, I bought something new, try to do it every year, wear your red on Friday. It doesn't matter where it is on your body, wear something red, because somewhere out there is someone that you probably know but don't know has congenital heart disease. And just also help me spread just that feeling that we can do anything. Where there's a will, there's a way, and no excuses. Get it done.
I love it. I will. I'm signed up. I'm committed fully to do exactly what you've asked. I'm not only a fan, but now you can count me as a friend and a supportive one. I am so enamored with you and what you're doing to make the world a better place and to spread this message. You are truly, truly inspiring. We didn't get to half of the things I wanted to talk about because this story was so compelling. But the next time we get together, I want to talk about you being this Mrs. Illinois, Mrs. Midwestern, and that whole process, and
Sure.
what that was like after going through all these health challenges to come kind of back into that arena, I think would be really inspiring. And then obviously we want to learn a little bit more about your approach to leadership and ultimately, why you went down the educational path. I can see why, and I could see why you're a kick-ass principal and why your staff loves you and your students, probably just are in awe of the amazing leader that you are. But We've got so much more to talk about, and I am just so absolutely grateful that you were able to carve out some time in your day to do this episode. But we got to do another one, so we're gonna have to
Yes.
figure that out. But I am so eternally grateful that you have entered my life, and I know we're gonna be friends for a very very long time. So
We
you're stuck with
are.
me.
I think there's big things coming for us. I see
I
us
think
doing
so. Yep,
something major,
absolutely.
major.
I like it. I love the way you think. I think it's fantastic. So
Gotta think
this is gonna be
big.
great. Well, guys, be sure to check out the links that Natalie provided and that we'll have on the screen and in the show notes, and reach out, learn about her work. I tell you, if you just put her name into Google, you're going to go down many, many rabbit holes, because there are a lot of people that have highlighted her great work and what she's doing. But you're going to continue to be enamored with her message, because this confidence and this, this power that she brings to this conversation here is something that she's done over and over again. You need a little Natalie in your life, and so I encourage you to make sure that you plug in. So we'll be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect very soon, but until then, Natalie, ripple on.